Hello, good afternoon. I'm Yanan Sui. I'm an associate professor at Tsinghua University, leading the Learning and Neurosystems group. Today, I'm going to talk about our work on human sensory musculoskeletal modeling and control of whole body movement. Our lab is working in general on the problem of learning to move. We build neuromusculoskeletal multiphysics models and we investigate how to control those complex systems, ranging from the central nervous system to the peripheral nervous system to the neural machine interface for neurosensing and simulations. And of course, today's major topic, our musculoskeletal system. The neural control of our movements is very complex. On the left, you see MS Human 700, a human musculoskeletal system we developed. We try to use 700 independent muscle tendon units to control the whole body movements of this human representation. So on the bottom, you see this is the muscle activation action space changing over time, representing the 700 muscle tendon units movements. And on top, what's in the blue matrix? In the blue matrix, you see the state space, the representation of our sensory information input. And today, we can build deep reinforcement learning algorithms that take those state space representations as input, sending it to our policy network, and output is the activation, the neural activation that drives the whole body movement. And in the long run, we actually want to replace the artificial neural network by our real central nervous system. And this leads to today's major topic, our sensory musculoskeletal human model. I'll briefly introduce our motivation to do this work and then dive into the model details on how do we build a sensory system and also its musculoskeletal anatomy representation. How do we control the system? We develop hierarchical deep reinforcement learning algorithm for its control. We'll also show that how the model together with the control algorithms can help us to achieve bipedal walking simulation, vision guided manipulation, and also bicycle riding. Okay, so let's start with the motivation. Yeah, we build a computation model of the human musculoskeletal system. Our motivation is mainly to computationally analyze how coordinated motor control is actually achieved. This may help us to understand how physical body gives rise to intelligent behaviors, like embodied intelligence these days. And also, we want to create a platform for research, no matter you're working in the field of neuroscience, medicine, sports, robotics, whatever human-related subjects, especially human movement-related subjects. We hope that this model can actually help us to answer more questions quantitatively. And our comprehensive controllable whole body model of the human sensory musculoskeletal system have three core features. First is the anatomical precision, and second, multisensory integration, and third is this dynamical control. The anatomical precision is a major part of the model. For this model, we have 175 body segments, 206 precise bone meshes, 278 joints, and 1,266 muscle tendon units. Those are jointly integrated into our Sims human model. Okay, so the musculoskeletal simulation at the center will require multisensory integration. How do we represent those sensory systems? We develop binocular visual sensing, joint proprioceptive sensing, muscle proprioceptive sensing, tactile sensing, vestibular sensing. All those can be integrated as state representation. With such state representation, our neural network, our policy network, or our real central nervous system will need to provide actions. the most straightforward are the neuromuscle dynamics. And those dynamics can be represented as a temporal matrix representing the muscle activity of each of the 1,266 muscle tendon units. Okay, so on the sensory part, let's look deeper into how do we build the embodied and multimodal sensing. Vision is an important example. In this model, we have binocular cameras. Sorry. We have binocular cameras and also we have foveal vision simulation. So you can see that the very central part of this visual image is the clearest. And when it's going to the peripheral side, the visual information become blurred. And we use the standard visual blur kernels from the visual sentencing research community. And also for each of these left eye, right eye visual inputs, we separate that into the RGB channels sending to the model. That's for vision. For proprioceptive information, how do we represent proprioception? We mainly consider at the joint level and also at the muscle level. For each joint, we record the angle, velocity, and acceleration of the joint. And for each muscle, we record the length, velocity, force, and activation information. So you can clearly see that those information, they are not purely independent. They are correlated, the angle, velocity, acceleration, right? So you can use integrals to or differentiations to calculate each other. But we still want them to be separated representations because there are previous studies showing that we have different sensors, right? That might be say directly sensing velocity or acceleration or angle independently. Yeah. So those are the proprioceptive sensing. And we also have the vestibular sensing and also the tactile sensing. So all got integrated on the left side. You see that's the sensing representation. And on the right, you see that is the activation. Because our sensing information sending to the control network, our policy network, we want the output to be biologically interpretable and quite straightforward related to neural computation. So we actually use neural excitation level to be the output actions. Then in this musculoskeletal system, we need to translate the neural excitation to muscle activation. Muscle activation will generate muscle force, and muscle force will lead to joint torque, which provide real movements of our multi-body physical system. And such movements will lead to the updates of our sensory information sending back to the policy network again. Yeah. So you run this in closed loop in order to achieve the control of the high dimensional musculoskeletal system using sensory information. On the musculoskeletal anatomy, in this model, we achieve unprecedented level of anatomical details. On the skeleton level, we have 175 body meshes and 206 precise bone meshes. We also carefully do the mass distribution over the body for each part, do those segmentations. And on the joint level, as we mentioned, we have 278 joints. For each joint, we need to make sure their position, axis, range of motion are correct, and their kinematic coupling with the neighboring parts are correct. On the muscle level, we have 1,266 muscle tendon units. We model the wrapping surfaces to ensure realistic muscle paths and simulate the contraction dynamics based on the Hill type muscle model. Yeah, the Hue model developed originally almost 90 to 100 years ago by the very famous neuroscientist A.V. Hue. Today, we're still using that simplified model. And this allows us to simulate not just the motion, but also the internal forces and torques that generate the movements. Okay, so then let's look into the hierarchical deep reinforcement learning parts to control the model. Our hierarchical control is on the group action level and unit adjustment level. Our musculoskeletal system having the sensory information, visual, proprioceptive, vestibular, and tactile, those are integrated and then sending to the control network. The hierarchical control network, the top level is a group action network that generate high-level commands, while the bottom level, the unit action network, fine-tunes individual muscles based on state-dependent feedback. So then the group actions, the unit adjustments will jointly provide action refinements, and those actions are sending back to the model to do its control. The model is trained via a stage-wise curriculum learning approach. So we have an actor-critic setup, and we make high-dimensional biological control tractable in this approach. So these days, we also have more advanced version and more efficient versions of the algorithm, like the QFlex algorithm we recently developed to achieve even better control. Okay, so let's see what seems human model can actually do. Yeah, so this is this is probably the fun part if you really want to see the results. Our first benchmark was bipedal walking. We trained the model to imitate a specific human subject trajectory recorded by a motion capture system. So here on the left, you see the model walking, and on the right, you see the left eye, the right eye. Those are the visual inputs to the eyes, and we actually can see from the video that the resulting gait is stable and quite natural. And when we quantify this, we see that the simulated joint angles also track the real human reference data very well with very high accuracy. For example, for shoulder and for elbow, pelvis, hip, knee, ankle, yeah, those angular tracking are quite good. Yeah, so that's the first step, right? We first need to make sure that on the kinematic level is correct, and then we can move to the muscle level. The simulated muscle activation patterns actually show a strong correlation with real EMG data recorded from the same subjects. You can see that they are not perfect, but like in GM, in TA, in also some other major muscles, we can see that the results are quite reasonable. And how can we use this? We probably can use this to predict the unseens. Yeah. So there are a lot of unknown activities in our deep and small muscles that we cannot directly record at all. For example, we can see that these muscles, they are the muscles that stabilizing our spines, right? So those muscles, which are they are nearly impossible to measure directly in a living human subject, right? They are deep, they're relatively small, but the joint movements and also the muscle activities, yeah, they can be inferred based on the model. Yeah, they are difficult to measure experimentally. Yeah, you may say that, oh, how accurate this could be. So we're step by step moving forward. For example, in the previous example, to try to align all the measurable parts and gradually to see that probably we can reach higher and higher accuracy for the unknown and impossible to measure muscles. At least those can give us some belief on how those muscles are behaving. Okay. The second task we give it is the vision guided manipulation task. Uh, we have the idea that we want to push the model beyond simple imitation of a given trajectory. Right. Today, we do a lot of imitation learning, no matter for robots or for human musculoskeletal system. But we also want to do beyond imitation learning. In this vision guided manipulation task, we actually uh, ask the model to pick up a bottle and follow a moving target. In the video, you see that the green bottle is actually the visual cue, the visual targets, and the blue bottle is the real bottle the model need to pick up and then move following the trajectory of the green one. So this task require clearly more sensory motor coordination than a lot of others. And you can see that its movements were precise. Yeah, it can keep the bottle closely aligned with the moving targets. And during the target tracking phase, our object is staying very close to the targets with low translational difference and also a rotational difference. Yeah, the control is quite precise. And also the fixation to object offsets in terms of the eye fixation, yeah, is also quite low, which lead to a good interpretation. Okay, so when we do this task, our eyes, our fixations are actually right on the targets instead of having the eye muscles driving your eyes to move arbitrarily over the space. Okay, so we even observe realistic control of the extraocular muscles that drive eye movements. Yeah, which actually makes sense, right? If you observe that the fixations are appropriate. So this is a behavior that emerged naturally from the task demand. We didn't follow any expert trajectory or any human trajectory at all, right? Because it's so hard to record those trajectories. You can record human body movements, the kinematics, but how do you record the eye movement together with the body movements in a large space simultaneously, right? So that's difficult. So for the rightward tracking uh, in this short video, so you can see on the left figures that the left medial rectus and the right lateral rectus, yeah, those muscles, they're showing enhanced activation, while the activities of their responsive antagonists were reduced, and this resulting in the shift of the fixation point to the right, right? Your eye fixation is following the bottle moving to the right. And you can also see reverse patterns when you're doing the moving to the right task, right? So those patterns were observed for lateral tracking. Yeah. And these actually demonstrate that our framework, it can integrate sensory perception and motor control, yeah, to generate relatively complex and goal-directed behaviors instead of doing just imitation. And no human motion data was provided here. The model, they had to learn their behavior from scratch. Yeah. And we can see that the model spontaneously develops such human-like strategies. They do the eye head hand coordination, right? So this is the process. You see that later we also do some human experiments, just trying to confirm the demonstrations that okay, so this is a natural process. Yeah, so you can see that for a natural human doing this task, also you naturally the eye tracking will then follow the trajectory. Your fixation will then focus on this in order to achieve the task. Right. So we have high precision the movement control. So although no imitations at all, right? But those goal-driven cues can also lead to the successful and very natural behavior, right? So these realistic eye movements, yeah, they're also quite interesting because notably we observe the extraocular muscle behaviors during the task, and these eye movements they also emerge naturally from the task demand instead of asking the eyes to focus on the bottle and not moving to other places. Yeah. So this is the vision guided manipulation task. The last task is the bicycle riding. We simulate bicycle riding to test the model's ability to interact with devices, to interact with the wall. Yeah, so you can also see the left eye, right eye's view. And we see that the model successfully learned to produce a rhythmic and stable pedaling motion while keeping its upper body balanced on the bicycle. Yeah, and also the key point tracking errors. Those are the key point tracking errors. This is also also quite low. And also by analyzing the simulated force and also the muscle activity, the forces between the foot and the pedal, we could confirm that it's actually effectively transmitting its power, its energy to the bike. Yeah, the peaking the peaking force happens during your downstroke. Yeah, just like a human rider would usually do. Yeah. To summarize, we built this sensory musculoskeletal human model, seems human, as a comprehensive sensory musculoskeletal representation of our human body. We drive it using a hierarchical deep reinforcement learning framework in order to solve the high dimensional control problem. And we want this model in the long run to help us to better understand our movement control, our interaction with the world, and the neural control of movements from the bottom up. Yeah. So these are the major authors of this work, and beyond the human work, we're also actively looking into animal models like mouse, macaque, and how do we integrate our neural computation, neural recording, neural representations to the musculoskeletal, the movements and the factors. Okay, I'd like to end my talk here. So if you're interested in running such models, we have a early version, fully open source model together with efficient code for running. This is the MS Human 700, the whole body human musculoskeletal modeling and control. You can visit our project page, our group page for this model, and also for the Seems Human current draft paper. Yeah. Okay, I'd like to end my talk here and happy to answer questions. Thank you.